Today we're gonna make a classic, the Negroni. For this recipe, you're gonna need an old-fashioned glass, a jigger, a bar spoon, a vegetable peeler, a julep strainer, and a mixing glass. The ingredients are gin, Campari, sweet vermouth, and an orange peel for garnish. In the realm of classic cocktails, the Negroni certainly stands out. Its color is striking and iconic, which has to account for some of its appeal. It's sweet and light, but also bitter, and that aspect of it makes it unique for a drink of its stature. The flavor isn't always an instant success with newcomers. It's one that you'll need to warm up to, but once you learn to appreciate it, you'll understand why it's a classic, why most places serve it, and why it even has a week dedicated to it. As with most classics, the story behind the drink is a little muddy. It has its fair share of false leads and rabbit holes. But the usual story is that in 1919, an Italian nobleman named Camillo Negroni asked to beef up his usual aperitif of vermouth, Campari, and soda by adding some gin, and that drink was named after him. Unfortunately, there were a lot of other factors clouding up the water, like a shortage of documentation. There was also supposedly another branch of the Negroni family that claimed it was their ancestor who created the drink. Plus, there were so many other Negroni-like drinks springing up at the same time. Not to mention Arnaldo Strucchi's 1907 book, The Vermouth of Turin, which seems to lay out the recipes for the Negroni and the Boulevardier. And on top of that, the term Negroni in reference to the drink didn't show up publicly in print until 1947, nearly 30 years after its creation. However, the Italian bartender and cocktail historian Luca Picchi makes a good argument for the Camillo story in his extremely detailed book, Negroni Cocktail, an Italian Legend. And the godfather of cocktail historians, David Wondrich, helped tie up most of the other loose ends in his recent article, How the Negroni Conquered America. According to Picchi, the story of the Negroni is as follows. Camillo Negroni was a turn-of-the-century half-English, half-Italian aristocrat who spent most of his early adulthood traveling all over North America. And in 1898, he settled down for several years in Manhattan. This was still the golden age of cocktails, and vermouth cocktails like the Manhattan, the Martinez, and particularly the Martini, were all the rage. Picchi asserts that this period had a profound impact on Camillo. As expressed in the Vermouth of Turin, the concept of drinking vermouth or amaro, anything other than straight, was a foreign one to Italians. It was something Americans did. And Camillo got to experience it firsthand at the very epicenter of American cocktail culture. Camillo moved back to Italy in 1904 and to Florence in 1912. A couple years later, Camillo made it a habit to stop into Cafe Casoni for a quick one before going out for the night. And starting in 1917, a bartender named Fusco Scarselli began working there. And this relationship between Fusco and Camillo would give birth to the Negroni Cocktail. Camillo liked to drink American-style concoctions. He was already drinking vermouth, amaro, and soda in an American fashion, so his request to strengthen his aperitif with gin seemed like a natural progression, especially given his exposure to vermouth cocktails in New York. According to Fusco, Camillo first made this request around 1919 or 1920, and it quickly became his usual drink. By October 1920, Camillo's friends were casually referring to this drink as a Negroni. In a letter to Camillo, Francis Harper, an antique dealer in London, knowing that Camillo had been ill, suggested that he must not take more than 20 Negronis in one day, and lamented, "How I wish I could come out now and help you drink one or two." 20 Negronis a day seems like a mind-blowing number, and according to Picchi, Camillo was known to drink 40 Negronis a day. However, Picchi knew that Camillo's version was made with soda water, and he also figured out that the Negronis that Camillo drank were served in a cordial glass, so they were about a quarter of the size of the ones that we make today. All of which made the number seem a little more reasonable. A little more. The Negroni, as with all American-style drinks, had to fly under the radar as the fierce nationalism of Italian fascism became more prominent in the late 1920s. The word cocktail was virtually outlawed in Italy during this time, which would help account for the drink's absence in print and Italian media. In 1932, Cafe Casoni changed ownership and was rebranded. Fusco, the bartender who first mixed the Negroni for Camillo, moved across town to work at the American bar at the Ugolino Golf Club, and in 1934 Camillo Negroni died. But Fusco and other bartenders helped keep the drink alive, so that after the war, when bars were catering to tourists and influential Americans like Orson Welles and Ernest Hemingway, the Negroni was able to be introduced to them. It was recently uncovered that in 1947, the Negroni appeared twice in an obscure Italian cocktail book, of which only a few copies remain intact. The book was called Cocktail Portfolio, and there was a recipe for a Negroni the way Camillo liked it, as well as a variation on the original. That little-known book didn't exactly put the cocktail on the map, but a few months later, the drink got a much bigger boost from Orson Welles.
What's in it for me?
The gratitude of generations unborn.
Welles was in Rome shooting the movie Black Magic when he was introduced to the drink. He told Erskine Johnson, a gossip columnist, about it, and it appeared in a widely syndicated write-up. A few weeks after that, Ernest Hemingway was photographed in Cortina, Italy, making what looks like Camillo's Negroni in a small cordial glass, with soda. Then the drink started popping up in several cocktail books. But unlike Paris in the 20s, by the late 40s, early 50s, the recipe started showing up under the name Negroni. In 1960, James Bond drank a Negroni in the opening pages of the short story Risico. 1961 was kind of a big year for the Negroni. It was selected to be a part of the first IBA cocktail book. It had an appearance in the film The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone.
Would you like a cocktail? A Negroni.
How did you know I like Negroni?
And also that year, a lawsuit was settled against an Italian company selling a pre-made bright red cocktail called the Old Negroni Cocktail. However, the contents of the drink were totally different. And in the ensuing courtroom drama, several customers and bartenders, including Fusco Scarselli, testified that the Negroni was created in Florence in the 1920s. The pre-batch cocktail manufacturer lost the lawsuit, and the testimony of the drink's origins were entered into the public record. As far as the other Negroni-like cocktails that popped up all over the place in the late 1920s, David Wondrich attributes this to Campari and the push they were making at the time to break into the French market. They ran ads, contests, and generally worked hard to get the Amaro into bartenders' hands. This resulted in a super bloom of similar cocktails, all with different names and presumably created independently. The Boulevardier and the Old Pal were the notable whiskey versions, but there were a dozen versions with gin, vermouth, and Campari, and most of them came out of Paris. It's tempting to think that if things had tipped a bit differently, we'd be referring to the drink as the Julio or the Campari Nette or the Charlie P. But there was a lot more that went into the Negroni than just a combination of ingredients. For bartenders, Campari is easy to mix and easy to fall in love with. Same with iconoclasts like Welles, Hemingway, and Camillo Negroni. However, for the average Joe, the drink can be challenging. Once you embrace it, there's no going back, but it is a bit of an acquired taste. According to the story Picchi lays out in his book, the real secret to the drink's success was Camillo Negroni's widespread influence over both the mavens in his social circles and the Italian bartenders he convinced to champion his drink. Those same bartenders carried the torch on the American style of drinking after the war and continued to embrace his cocktail. It probably didn't hurt that the drink showcases some great Italian ingredients, but it was that support that helped it become well known enough in Italy to get picked up in cocktail books and pop culture in the late 20th century, which then gave it enough ballast to be included in the first round of cocktail revivals in the early 21st century. So even with examples like the Vermouth of Turin and Campari's marketing campaign of the 1920s that made the recipe seem inevitable, it took a groundswell of support and local pride to get the drink to its current state of ubiquity. In terms of the garnish, it's really up to your style. I usually stick to an orange peel, but it's not uncommon to garnish it with half an orange wheel. And if you're feeling fancy, maybe a hit of soda water. As always, the gin is up to you. Most commonly, you'll see it made with a London dry gin, but it's also fun to switch it up with some new wave gins, and you'll be able to get great Negronis out of any of those. For the past few years, I've been partial to the Astral Pacific gin for my Negronis. The base is made from clementines, so it retains this wonderful citrus note in the finished spirit. Also, its balance of botanicals were specifically tailored to work with Negronis. I recently did a blind taste test of Negronis with different gins, and Astral Pacific really stood out as the clear favorite. So if you can get your hands on it, I definitely recommend picking up a bottle. The recipe for the Negroni is about as simple as you can get. Gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth in equal parts, with an orange for garnish. But I end up making it one of two ways, depending on the circumstances. If I'm going to drink it quickly, I won't worry about over-diluting it. I'll just build it in a glass over smaller ice cubes, give it a quick stir, and hit it with an orange. This also works if I'm feeling particularly lazy. But most of the time I'll build it in the mixing glass and strain it over a large hunk of ice. That way I won't have to worry about it getting too watery. I can take my time and savor it. Let's start by chilling our glass. Fill it with ice and set it aside. Next we're going to measure an ounce of gin, add that to the mixing glass. Measure an ounce of Campari, add that to the mixing glass. Measure an ounce of sweet vermouth. Add that to the mixing glass. Add ice, and give it a good stir to chill it down and give it some dilution. Drop a large hunk of ice in your glass, then strain the contents of your mixing glass over the ice in your old-fashioned glass. Cut a wide swath of orange peel. Be careful not to cut too deep into the white pith. Express the oils of your orange twist over the drink, rub it along the rim of your glass, and drop it in for garnish. And that's all there is to it. Bright, bitter, and beautiful as always. The Negroni. Saluti. Special thanks to Martin Duderoff for letting me bounce ideas off of him, and for getting into the weeds with me on some nerdy Negroni theories. Please support this channel by clicking on the Patreon link here. Check out some more videos, and be sure to subscribe. For links, more info, and the printed recipe, check out the description below.